Welcome to Snaizeholme, a site owned and managed by the Woodland Trust, supported by the White Rose Forest. Tree planting's gone really well again this year, really. Much better weather for the planters. I'm sure they'll probably talk a bit more positively about it when you talk to them. But we're effectively pretty close to finishing up that main bulk of planting that we aim for. We're getting pretty close to about 290 hectares across this site planted. So all the slopes that you see around me have been planted now. We've just finished up planting in this valley bottom here. And this is where we're actually changing tact a little bit. Where we're planting in the deep gullies. There are waders in and around here, so the idea is that we really keep the trees out of the sight lines of them waders. So we're planting mainly shrub in these deep lying gills, and it's really important here to get this tree cover down in here, up against the watercourses, creating that dappled shade to regulate temperature in the watercourses, but also adding woody debris into these watercourses is great for inverts and what's been missing in a lot of these landscapes. So this is a good example of what we're trying to create here in the valley bottom and some of the different planting that we've done. You might see that there's multiple trees in this one area and this one scrape. The idea here is that we're trying to create a thicket, really, make it more difficult for herbivores to get in here and really impact on this. We are in the farm valley bottom here, so there are cows in and amongst all this. I also think it'd be great habitat down here. And as you can see here, we've already had a little bit of browsing on some of these, but thorn and the like are quite resistant to that. And then obviously the amount that we've planted here, you'd expect plenty to get away.
Well, thankfully the weather's been a lot kinder to us this season. Last season was pretty much rain all the time. We've been pretty lucky. We still get a fair mixture here, but compared to last year, it's been quite nice, really.
Well, last season, should I say, Snaizeholme was sort of testing us. It's definitely been more mellow for us now.
It's hard work, but it's nice to be here. And the good thing now is the wildlife's coming back. You can hear the birds coming back, so it's quite nice, especially on a day like this.
We've done all the way around the valley now, and now we're back on to just replanting a few of the spots where the wildlife have taken quite a taste of the trees that were planted in previous seasons. But we kind of knew that was going to happen. That's all part of the job. Well, I think so far we're about around 200,000 mark. Good days and bad days. Really, it just depends on the existing vegetation, because that can be quite thick, chopping through it to get some bare soil to plant into. But yeah, generally we average about between 600, 700 trees per man per day, something like that.
It's like a marathon. You just sort of carry on, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. There has been some losses, but as you look through and you get your head in, you can actually see quite a few growing. I've seen the odd aspen as well, and that, in my eyes, if you've got one aspen, we all know an aspen suckers out and you can create a whole forest from one aspen. So, job done.
Yeah, so we do have a long-term research program here which will help us monitor these trees and the survival rates that we're getting out of these trees. We want things to develop naturally, so we're accepting that we will lose a lot of trees and things will develop quite naturally. But I think it's important that we do keep track of that, and if deemed necessary, we can intervene where needed. But next year going forward, we do have some plans to do a bit more planting, but covering the old ground. So we're looking at introducing some more niche species into the landscape. So montane shrub mainly, looking at things like eared willow and dwarf birches, things that you would associate to do well out here. It'd be great to reintroduce back into this landscape. last year we undertook river restoration work, which saw us introduce woody debris into the watercourse, which you see behind me here. Also raised the riverbed level in various places, and also reconnected the floodplain. It's settling in really nicely. Some of the trees get knocked around a little bit, and again, more natural processes taking effect. And yeah, some really great responses so far. We're keeping a close eye on it. Johnny Gray from Woodland Trust is out there quite regularly and got some great sort of time lapses and drone footage of when it's in severe flood. So yeah, it's exciting. We do have plans going forward, so we're working with a consultant to model the whole valley and see where the water's going and see what other opportunities we have for improving sort of aquatic habitat and improving wetland habitats as well. Yeah, so we finished up with one phase of peatland restoration work up on just the head of the valley, up on our peatland up there, working with, in partnership with the Yorkshire Peat Partnership. All that work's responding really nicely. Water coming off that site a lot slower and a lot more sort of water knocking around up there, definitely a lot wetter. We do have another small phase of work just happening in the next couple of weeks, which you'll see trying to revegetate some of the areas of bare peat. So that includes plug planting and some reseeding of some of the bare areas, just trying to revegetate that. The last summer we got pretty well wrapped up with the fencing. We did pull off because of the weather. It gets very wet out here. The ground conditions mean that the machinery can't travel. So we got everything in the treed areas that we want to fence and a lot of the valley bottom that we want to fence. And we've just got them coming back in a couple of weeks' time just to finish up a few bits and pieces. But that's largely been completed. One of the big jobs last summer was to fencing for the farming unit down this valley bottom. So we've broken up the valley bottom in a way that we can manage the livestock and rotate them to make sure that there's not too much pressure in certain areas. And yeah, we're working really closely with a local grazier to manage the land down here. So we do have a herd of Herefords still on here. And yeah, it's a really good relationship there, and working close with the farmers to work out how we can best deliver for conservation and for farming needs as well. Yeah, one of the reasons why the fences are coming back next year, a lot of redundant fencing on this side. So we put in a lot of fencing up to about 20 kilometres, but we've got probably getting close to that just in redundant fencing, which we just don't have a need for anymore. It's a blot on the landscape. And yeah, it'd be really good to get this gone and removed. Yeah, so we just finished work on 3 field barns on site, so restoring the 3 field barns. The idea there is we wanted to make sure that we were retaining them in the landscape, but also put them to use. So one particular barn we're keen to make use for welfare on site. It's a very remote site, so to have facilities here is pretty important, but also for educational reasons and group visits and making use of the barn that way. So yeah, we're in sort of deep talks with other organisations to try and understand how we can use this space really.
I'd say the end of stage 1 is in sight. I think it's going to be constantly coming back and tweaking certain areas. I mean, we have planted all the what you call the virgin areas where there's not been any planting done already. So we finished that just around Christmas time. But I think it's just going to be a case of monitoring it, seeing where we need to come back in and replant.
And I did a similar project in the 90s over in East Lancashire. Not quite on this scale, but going back to see the fully grown trees, or at least, 30-year-old trees, yeah, it's quite rewarding really. So I'm looking forward to coming back in a few years, well, 10 or 20 years, and having a good look at it.
It's such a slog. We all think, oh, we've got to get to the end, but then it has been a big part of our lives. So yeah, a little bit of sadness really. But as I say, I think the connection will still be there. We'll always, all of us will all be coming back here in one form or another, just to keep an eye on it really, and see how it transforms over the years.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of pride. I mean, I don't think we'll We might get a little bit of the benefit of it. We'll probably see it just getting above our heads by the time I'm a fairly old man. It's a legacy, I suppose, you're leaving. I suppose that spurs you on to keep going on the worst days. When you see these woodlands on the edge, there's some of the plantation, you're like, oh yeah, it'll get to that height, but you realise you're not going to be around for that. So it's definitely for the grandchildren.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that I'll come back on a nice warm spring day and I'll hear all the birds singing and maybe sit under the shade of some of the trees that we've planted, so fingers crossed.